everybody and welcome to our planning committee. Apologies for absence, please.
Apologies for sick on Councillor Daventry.
Anybody else? No. Councillor Robertson
Councillor Malcolm Longley cannot be here tonight.
and Councillor Robertson as well. Otherwise it's complete. Right, members' interest. Sorry. Yes. Before we do that, we'd better sign. Is it your wish, members, I sign the as a proper record of the previous meeting? Agreed. Agreed? Thank you. Now, disclosable interest. Anybody?
Chair, there's one item on the agenda this evening relating to Grisworth. No direct involvement, I'm just aware of the issue.
Right. I know one of the speakers, Mr. Dalby from Daventry Council. I'm a county councillor and he's the leader of the county council, but we haven't spoken about it. Councillor Hollingsworth?
If you register that interest, I might register the same interest, but I have never spoken with Councillor Goldie about that planning application.
Thank you. Councillor Dabbs?
Yeah, Mr. Willis is an ex-work colleague of mine. I did retire from the board work 3 years ago, so I don't think our association is so close.
Right, anybody else? No. Disclosable interests. Party whipping arrangements, yeah?
No.
Members of the public, that means we don't get together as small groups and decide how we're going to vote beforehand. We have a free vote on the night. There is one application which has been withdrawn. It's the application of Crick. It's withdrawn because the applicant wishes to make additional legal representation. A bit of housekeeping before we start the meeting. If the fire alarm bell rings, please go out the way you came in and assemble outside. Please switch your phones to silent, because we have a system where you pay £10 if it goes off and it goes to the chairman's fund, and the chairman is sitting over there, so he will get it. The proceedings are being recorded, sound-wise. Speakers have 3 minutes, and after that you'll be asked to wind up. There will be one exception to that, which I'll tell you about in a minute. And that's the only opportunity the public will have to speak, so please don't interrupt during the debate, I'm sure you won't. The next thing I don't think is applicable, but don't clap, cheer, hiss, boo, or stand up or wave your arms. But I don't think you're a bunch of people that are going to do that. You will see officers talking during the course of the meeting, sometimes while you're talking. That is to get an answer to the point you're making. It looks awfully bad manners, but it's the only way the meeting can flow. Now, we come to the first two applications. They're both in Harleston, and we're going to take them both together. They're going to be presented together. The speakers will talk about them together, so each speaker will have up to 6 minutes. And then we will vote on them separately. So we'll get separate proposals for each one. That's the way we'll deal with them. So, officers, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This presentation relates to two applications, as already outlined. There's application A, which is for the whole of the application site to comprise a total of 1,750 dwellings. Application B comprises the initial phase of development for up to 600 dwellings. Application is located on the western edge of Northampton, bounded to the east by New Sandy Lane, to the south by Roman Road, to the west by agricultural land, and to the north at Round Oak Plantation. The site is visually contained and screened from the villages of Harpole, Upper Harleston and Harleston by the existing topography and areas of woodland. The site comprises a significant proportion of policy N4 allocation for the Northampton West Sustainable Urban Extension contained in the core strategy. An environmental statement was submitted with the application. Initial consultation exercise was carried out in October 2017. Due to additional information being submitted with regards to a traffic assessment, an updated written scheme of investigation and a revised master plan, a further round of formal consultation was carried out in November 2018. Discussions have been ongoing throughout the application process with the applicant's highway consultants and the local highway authority. Following the submission of an updated traffic assessment, the local highway authority are in a position to support the application, subject to a number of mitigation measures which will be secured either via conditions or legal agreements. So in brief, these relate to the implementation of 3 new access junctions by an agreed time, widening of Port Road and Roman Road for buses, realignment of Port Road to discourage traffic continuing on to Harleston, granting style condition to restrict the number of dwellings that can be delivered prior to the completion of the Sandy Lane Relief Road to 430. Following the second round of consultation, Harleston and Duston Parish Council still have concerns with the application, mainly relating to local highway issues. 3 representations were received from local objections during the second round of consultation, again based on local highway issues and the impact on surrounding conservation areas. Whilst the concerns of the Parish Council and local residents are appreciated, these must be weighed against the fact that the local highway authority have now confirmed they have no objection to the application on grounds of highway safety. As stated, any mitigation measures will be secured either via conditions or legal agreements. With regard to the allocation and the joint core strategy, the application proposes to deliver 1,750 dwellings out of the 2,550 allocated by policy N4. The proposal excludes quite a large area of the N4 allocation, which is primarily agricultural land to the southwest. The applicants have only been able to secure this part of the allocation within the red line, as the landowners for the other parts are not willing or able to sell at the moment. The NRDA cannot demonstrate a viable supply of housing land, and the MPPF is clear on the need to boost significantly the supply of housing. With regard to affordable housing, the scheme is unable to be policy compliant with regards to achieving 35% of the dwellings as affordable. The applicants have carried out a viability appraisal due to the costs associated with the first phase of development, these being the main site accesses, significant stretches of the spine road, provision of the local centre, the primary school, and a significant proportion of amenity space being within this phase. The applicant's viability assessment was independently assessed by a consultant appointed by and working on behalf of Daventry District Council and South Northants. The consultant concluded that phase 1A, which is 430 dwellings, there will be no affordable housing. In phase 1B, for 170 dwellings, there will be 30% affordable, and in phase 2, for 1,150 dwellings, there will be 35%, which is policy compliance. Overall, this equates to 26% of affordable units over the application site. Whilst this means that the scheme is not policy compliant, on balance it is considered that we are able to agree this balanced against the infrastructure costs associated with the first phase of development. It is agreed that the upfront costs such as the primary school, the local centre, connections to the highway will facilitate the delivery of the later phases of development which need to be secured. When compared to other SUEs approved within the NRDA, the scheme provides a relatively high percentage of affordable. For example, both Dannington Grange and Toaster South only provide 10% affordable. The level of affordable units has been increased during the process of the application as a result of the viability assessment being assessed by a consultant. Officers have suggested a review mechanism to be drafted into the agreement which allows the council to get more affordable units if the scheme exceeds its expectations. On balance, it is considered that the scheme will deliver a balanced and sustainable development with community infrastructure in an attractive, well-designed landscaped environment. The proposed arrangements for accessing the development will enable it to be safely and conveniently accessed by car, public transport, without significant adverse impact on the existing highway network. The application will protect and enhance biodiversity and historic heritage. It will not cause flooding or any other significant adverse environmental impacts that would warrant refusal of planning permission. The scheme will of course extend into open countryside, taking up agricultural lands, and will change the appearance of the existing countryside. On balance, however, that change is justified by the positive contribution the scheme will make. I'd just like to draw members' attention to the late items. There's a couple of typos on pages 12 and 36. 12 further representations have been received, raising the same issues that are actually outlined in the report. There's also representation received from the Whitehall and Spring Park Residents Association. There's an update from the agents with regard to highway mitigation as a result of the report. and there is also a draft set of the conditions. It's recommended that planning permission be granted for the scheme subject to the imposition of conditions listed in the later business, and delegated powers to be given to the Executive Director to enable the conditions to be finalised and the Section 106 completed.
Thank you. We have 3 speakers. First of all, Mr. Miller, who's against the application. You have maximum 6 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillors. Thank you for, so I'm speaking on behalf of White Hills and Springpad Residents Association, so thank you for mentioning our late submissions. First of all, I'd like to remind members of the committee of the past. In 2011, the planning committee in this very building refused a planning application for the houses at Buxton Fields on the grounds that the infrastructure in the area was insufficient to cope with the size of the development. I don't know if any members of the planning committee were there at that time. It was, from memory, it was a slightly busier meeting than this one. 8 years on, Buxton Fields is a new housing estate. It's got several hundred happy homes, many more to come. And it's got a road system that's creaking at the edges and with no sign of the infrastructure that was promised at the time. All that we've got is a planning application for the North West Relief Road. And I think this is interesting because this development this evening discusses the North West Relief Road. As discussed earlier on, the Sandy Lane Relief Road and the North West Relief Road are seen as critical mitigation for this development, and many people are pinning their hopes on these roads freeing Dustin from congestion. And our view, it's disappointing, is that the North West Relief Road will do no such thing. There is an open planning application on the Northamptonshire County Council website that was due to come to development control in October, but this has been delayed for reasons I'll come back to in a minute. Currently, the traffic assessment for this North West Relief Road forecasts that traffic will increase hugely where the road terminates, which will mean increased traffic in the Spring Park area, which I'm representing, as well as in Chapel Brampton, Church Brampton, Boughton and Malton. And why, you might ask, is the road not coming to that planning committee meeting in October as planned? Well, it's because the traffic assessment also includes a roundabout near those villages, which forecasts delays and peak journey times of up to 20 minutes. But the claims these days of delays are acceptable because it will reduce the number of cars trying to use the new road, which will already be at capacity. Our Residents Association pointed this out to the County Council, and they've gone back and asked the traffic assessment people, the consultants, for a revised design, after which they're going to reopen the plans for consultation with a subsequent planning committee visit in November. As of this evening, that addendum is still unpublished. So if you think that the North West Relief Road will support the traffic generated by this scheme, we think you're wrong. The North West Relief Road, as the plans currently stand, is a white elephant road that is not fit for purpose. It won't relieve the traffic congestion from this development. It will dump thousands of cars in congested roads a couple of miles away. Now this evening, I'm not asking you to reject this application or to endorse this application. I'm suggesting that you defer your decision, that you take time to understand the planning application for the North West Relief Road, that you understand the effect it will have on residents of Boughton and Malton and the Bramptons, and that you can only make a decision on this planning application when you are happy that that road will offer the relief that you're hoping for. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Councillor Golby, who's speaking on behalf of Dustin Parish Council.
Do you want to sit down or stand up?
Either. You can sit down, stand up, whichever you want to. Probably hear you better if you
Okay,
stand up.
thank you, Chair, thank you, Committee. As the Chair said, I'm here representing Dustin Parish Council, and I'm a councillor that covers the area on the right of the plan there, which is the St Giles Estate, and the road called Wakes Farm Road. I'm not here to object to the application, but just to highlight some concerns that we all get as local members. Those being that Dustin is a village, effectively. It's got village infrastructure, but it's actually the size of a small town. It's 15,500 people live there, and the road infrastructure was built in the sort of 40s and 50s and expanded as the village grew throughout 60s, 70s and 80s. So it is the size of a small town, but it still has those services there. There's been a couple of new developments there. I would say the village is developed out in terms of available space. But I just wanted to put this development in the context of some numbers perhaps, and what that means to people. As when we're, as members, asked to consider things in a strategic nature, we're often talking about large numbers of houses, contributing to 5-year housing land supply, how it affects things like the West Northampton Joint Course Strategy, the delivery of numbers allocated to Daventry District Council, what that means when they're built around the edge of Northampton. And frankly, they put a lot of pressure on already pressurised local infrastructure services, and that's the point I just wanted to make. That's obviously we make big decisions that have an impact not only for the people that will hopefully come and live in these houses, but to the people that are already living in the developed communities, and that's where I'm coming from tonight. I think there are some lessons that we can learn and hopefully will be adopted here. We've got a couple of developments in Dustin, the Timken estate, and we've got Marina Park and St Crispin's around us, and we've had issues around some of the green spaces and green space management, and I would urge through the officers perhaps that we allow things like the new parish council that are being talked about, to perhaps adopt some of those green spaces to mitigate the impact of things like management charges that create a lot of issue and angst for local residents. We'll also encourage pedestrian and cycle links as a part of this application. And again, that point around public open space, we need to make sure that there is an effective means of managing it and governing it. But the main point I want to say is how we consider this in terms of the people that we represent as local members, the existing communities, the infrastructure, the exacerbation on things like the traffic systems and roads, and I know I might accept the comments from the Highways Authority, but you know, Dustin is a very busy place. It's got convenient links down to the likes of Sixfields, and we're just concerned that we don't want to create too many rat runs, and we call, and I hear the gentleman's comments, Mr Miller, about the North West Relief Road. I would say as a Dustin resident, that's something that we need. We also need to complete Sandy Lane Relief Road and just have the amenities for the new residents there from the earliest point possible. I understand the technicalities and how difficult it is to, you know, provide infrastructure first, and you need to provide school places and all that sort of stuff. But I would just call through the committee just to urge officers when we're considering these schemes to ensure we do as much as we can to get those amenities there first, to get the school places there, and to do what we can to mitigate the impact on the residents that are already there and that have been established in their communities for a long, long time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Galway. Next speaker is Mr White, who's the agent.
Chair and members, on behalf of Law Homes, thank you for considering these two applications this evening. The committee report you have before you provides a comprehensive analysis of the applications, and I do not intend to revisit in detail aspects of the report. I would like, however, to provide what I hope are useful clarifications as to the approach to the applications and their context, phasing and infrastructure provision, viability in the level of affordable housing, local and wider area highways issues. In terms of the approach to the applications, we have developed a master plan covering the entire allocation to provide a framework within which the planning applications can be brought forward. The applications before you this evening include for all the land under the control of Law Homes, with additional areas subject to planning applications by others, or will be brought forward in due course. Importantly, the master plan ensures that bringing forward our applications does not prejudice the delivery of the remaining parts of the allocation, and in fact helps facilitate this. At the time the applications were submitted, we were informed by the Highway Authority that there was a limit on the available highway capacity in the wider area prior to the completion of the new Sandy Lane Relief Road link across Norwood Farm SUE to the south. We therefore submitted a Phase 1 application, which is application B, alongside the main application A, to ensure that the first phase could be brought forward pending the delivery of the link road. Both of the applications will deliver the key on-site community infrastructure in Phase 1, including the main accesses from New Sandy Lane and Port Road, pedestrian and cycle links to the wider area, the primary school site and funding to enable its construction, the local centre site, the community centre site and its funding, open space and landscaping, and the initial bus route through the site. As you will appreciate, this means that the infrastructure costs for the proposals are heavily front-loaded, such that the overall for phase 1, these costs are approximately £63,000 per dwelling, as opposed to an average across all phases of approximately £36,000 per dwelling. This unavoidably affects the level of affordable housing provision across the initial phase, as whilst for the majority of the proposals we will be providing 35% in accordance with policy. Within phase 1, this is necessarily reduced, although 51 affordable homes will still be delivered out of a total of approximately 455 across the development. There are also benefits in relation to SIL payments and applying an average rate across the slightly differing Daventry and Northamptonshire levies. The approximate contributions will be for phase 1, £3.5 million, the remaining phases £6.75 million, with a total development contributing £10.25 million. Regarding highways, the necessary off-site junction improvement schemes, as you've heard, have been agreed with the County Council, including the mechanisms for their delivery, either by way of planning condition or Section 106 contribution, including nearly £5 million for the North West Relief Road to enable that to come forward. At the more local level, our early discussions with Harleston Parish Council highlighted their concerns over the potential impacts of additional traffic movements through the village and what measures we could put in place to alleviate these. We undertook a study into various options, including closing Port Road, and consulted the Parish Council, the Highway Authority and other stakeholders on these. The Highway Authority was quite clear that from their perspective, closure of Port Road, or even making it one way, was not an option they would support, and seeing as only the Highway Authority can promote the road closure, we could not progress with this. However, we are proposing a diversion of Port Road into the northern part of the site, as shown on the illustrative master plan, such that it becomes a less convenient route towards the village. Combined with signage and traffic calming measures, the revised highway modelling predicts that during phase 1 only, an additional half dozen or so vehicle movements would occur west along Port Road during peak hours, equivalent to one car every 10 minutes, and once the entire development is completed, roughly 35 to 40 additional movements would occur, equivalent to one car every 2 minutes during peak hours only. Should you feel able to support the schemes, I can confirm that Bloor Homes would wish to discuss the formation of a liaison group with the Parish Council and the new Harleston Manor Parish Council with regards to the detailed design of these measures, which could include for a gateway feature into the village and other matters throughout the life of the project. Thank you for your time this evening, and I trust this informs your consideration of our proposals. We'll be pleased to answer any outstanding queries you may have, and with me is David Joseph from Bloor Homes and John Alton, our highways consultant from High Transport.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Right, next local member, Councillor Shepherd.
Chairman, thank you. A number of miscellaneous points. Firstly, maybe another typo. I'm right, I think, that application A is the whole site and application B is the smaller one. That's right. Yeah. Well, I think Northampton County Council have got at least got their headings the wrong way around. Is that right? Because if you look at the County Council education comments early on in the report, page what is it?
Page 15.
Page 15 there. Application A, development of this size expected to generate 180 early years, 180 plus 220. Yes, we got that? And if we turn over the page, application B is expected to generate 500 early years, 500 and 350. And they talk about application B being 7.5 million required, application A being 2 million required. I think you've got, hopefully they've just got the heading the wrong way around. Sound about right? Just the heading.
Typo, apparently, yes. It is the wrong way around.
It's just the heading the wrong way around.
Yeah. We're just checking you read the minutes.
Sure, through the yes. I'm also assured that the houses are going to be sold freehold, which is great. We all know we've had some local difficulties with leasehold properties. That's good. And Mr. Miller and others have drawn the parallel with Boughton. And one of the most dramatic differences between this and the Buckton Fields development at Boughton is the early provision of the local centre and the facilities that are being provided for there in phase 1. and this is in complete contradistinction with Boughton, which in Buckton Fields we have a three-phase development, and phase 1 and 2 is delivering about 700 or so houses, and phase 3 is delivering the community facilities. And we've got no community facilities at all yet at Buckton Fields, because that was provided for as phase 3. It is a tremendous and beneficial change that we have the local centre provided here in phase 1, and that's very much the credit of someone, I'm not sure who, but whether it's a law initiative or district council initiative, I don't know, but whoever initiative it is, it's to be commended. Now, my only concern about that is that the local centre is jolly ambitious. Retail, finance, restaurant and case use, public house, takeaway, residential, community health care facility. We know how long sometimes it takes to deliver healthcare facilities. So my concern was that although it's provided it's intended to be provided in phase 1, can we have some sort of firm assurances that that will be the case? For example, that we don't go on to phase 2 until that is complete. Now, that could be a matter for a condition or some provision. I just leave that thought in the air. Equally, there is an indication that the whole scheme should take 11 years. There could be a provision whereby the phase 1 takes X years. 3 has been a number that I've heard about. Again, I don't think that's yet conditioned, but those are two specific points that I invite consideration of at the further negotiation stage, that maybe we don't move on beyond phase 1 without the community centre, the local centre being completed, and secondly that phase 1 may be time conditioned. Those are simply some suggestions. Finally, mention is made of the liaison forum, and again we have a very clear parallel with Boughton. I was asked to chair the Boughton liaison forum when it started, when Law and Martin Grant commenced work at Boughton, and in my experience it's worked really well. And I would like to think that the same approach could be taken here, and it's good to hear Law confirm that they would wish to participate in the liaison forum. Of course, it would have to be, I would like to think, also in close liaison with Harpole. I don't know whether there's any Harpole representatives here. No, probably not. It goes to South Northants, I think, next week. But certainly there will be willingness on the ground to operate a liaison forum, albeit with the brand new Harston Manor Parish Council that would be involved, so that of itself would present some challenges. But overall, my main concern is that I expressed earlier, and I'm sure those concerns can be addressed in conditions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Would you like
Thank you,
to answer those?
I'll just come back on a couple of issues. I should have said at the start that South Northants District Council will be taking the application to their planning committee next week. And also phase 1 of the development does cover, as you can see by the plan that's up at the moment, it does cover both this Daventry to the north and then South Northants to the south of that blue line. So just to clarify that point. In terms of comments about the local centre and delivery of the local centre, there will be triggers in the 106 that it has to be provided by a certain time. So we are still negotiating on the section 1 of the final drafting of the 106 at the moment. In terms of a condition to request that the development is developed by a certain time, I think would be unreasonable. I don't think that condition would meet the tests for that. I think it would be partly down to market forces at the time that commences, and as that commences through the 11 years as well.
Okay. Right, members. Deadly silence. Councillor Dawson.
Yeah, where to begin? First of all, I don't think it's acceptable to have these late representations and the amount that we've got. I don't know whether they were emailed earlier today. I haven't been able to get into my emails, but I don't see how we can take these into consideration with, what, 15, 16 pages. Luckily, I was here a little bit earlier, but otherwise I've just turned up at 6:15 and you know, you've got a lot of information there. I don't think that is acceptable. Outside of that, I think my general comment is that this is not a sustainable development unless you have a car, unless you will have a car. It's quite a long way out to Northampton now. Would you be able to cycle in? Not sure about that. I was certainly not sure about how cycle lanes would connect with the existing estates. There was indications at Berrywood Road that you could cycle down there, but I'm not sure how good that would be. So I'd be interested to know how the cycling infrastructure would work in terms of connecting to other parts of Northampton and so on. But I'm not really talking about the most important thing. I think the most important thing is the traffic. We've got a settlement here which is surrounded by small roads. I travel down Roman Road probably once a week, if not more so, down Berrywood Road. These are small roads. I think if we're going to have this, where do we put it, the relief road from the south, the Sandy Lane relief road, which from what I would understand that's partly built already from Whedon Road, but that's not going to be built until 430 houses have been completed. So that means that all the construction traffic, where's that going to go? How does the construction traffic get to the site? If it's, say, coming from the M1, it's going to have to go up through the turn left at the roundabout just outside Harpole. And again, no large roads. It's an increase in traffic. Will it go from other areas? I don't know, but I would call that into question and suggest really for this to be started, we need to have proper access from Whedon Road, and therefore you could restrict then all deliveries to that access. And I note from all the plans and so on that relief road would be subject to somebody else's development. So if it is going to be put in after the 430, I say I'm critical of that, but if it's going to be put in, how certain can we be that it will be done at the right time? But my point is that road should go in now before we start the development. So that's the construction traffic. In terms of after it's built, where are the people going to do their shopping? The on-site centre, I think it was noted, it's small, so they probably want to go to Sainsbury's in Sixfield. How do you get to Sainsbury's in Sixfield? You'll go through Dustin. And as we've already had from the resident there, Dustin is a village, it's narrow roads. Again, I go through Dustin probably most weeks, adding to the traffic no doubt, but if it got horrendous I would go by a different route. So I can't see that there's any proposal to get round that. That to me means that the estate is not sustainable. You all have to travel to Sainsbury's. The little local shop is not going to do it. Where are the major locations of employment? I suspect not on the estate. So that will again cause more traffic movements. I accept there will be buses, but everybody is not going to want to use a bus, or it may not be convenient for them. Schools. I know we're going to have a school on site. A secondary was mentioned. Don't know where that's going to be, but if it doesn't come to pass, and because I know that our county council has fallen down in the past in developments in Daventry refusing to supply schools. There's a school down Berrywood Road, which by all accounts is horrendous at school times. That would even be worse if we build these on. So I'd be interested in where the secondary school is going to go, the implications for traffic, and again, whether these things can be guaranteed. I suppose that the final point that I've got here is on the GP. You mentioned a health centre on that within the estate, but if I recall correctly in the report, the local commissioning group or whoever's in charge of these things is not in favour of it, and is in favour of, where was it, St Luke's, which is in Dustin, 2.4 kilometres away, 1.5 miles. Too far to walk. What does that mean? It's a car journey. So you're going to get more traffic down all these roads that can't cope with it. So I think, unfortunately, you need infrastructure first, then think about the development. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
you want to answer some of those?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just come back on a couple of points. I do apologise for the late reps and the amount of detail that was in there. But the majority of it does, of the draft conditions, at the time that the report was drafted, we still liaising with South Northants. So that's the current list that we've got at the moment, which we're liaising with South Northants and the agent over. So I do apologise for that at this moment. In terms of construction traffic, there is a condition for a construction management plan to be submitted before development commences. So we'll be able to agree with our environmental protection team and the county council in terms of where the best route is for construction traffic. In terms of also just the impact on highways, we have been negotiating with the local highway authority for the past 2 years since the application was originally submitted, and they, through negotiation, revised plans, updated travel impact assessments. We are now in a position where the highway authority are in support of the application, subject to mitigation measures to ensure that junctions are improved, and that all those improvement works will be secured by the 106 and also conditions.
Okay.
So just one final point, just in terms of Sandy Lane Relief Road, there's a Grampian style condition that the Highway Authority have advised us that we place on there to say that you were right, that they can only build up to 430 dwellings until that road is completed. So that is also to ensure that the infrastructure is there at the start of the development in order to accommodate that development. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wesley.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to bore everyone because a lot of what I was going to say has already been said, but I do just want to say it again. This development is all about infrastructure, isn't it? It's just, from where it is, it's a difficult place. I understand we've got to build houses, but I spent the last nearly 10 years driving down the Novotel Roman Road into Duston, into Lodge Farm Industrial Estate, driving and cycling. And every one of those small roads is already used by people getting into Northampton and out of Northampton and into Duston, going to see the Saints and anything else that you might want to think about. You have quite a lot of industry on this side of the town as well. You have a heavy use of lorries trundling in and out of there trying to get to the M1. Now I know there's mitigation in here, but let's not be under any illusion. This is just going to be chock-a-block with traffic within towards the end of the development. There is no way around it. You almost can't put enough mitigation in it. So you have to put up with it. And there's just small things, and you see there's already 2 developments there, aren't there, on the Harleston Road and the other side of the roundabout. They already cause a certain amount of issues. I mean, and there's just one rather silly thing that I'll point out that gets past highways. That's a bus stop on the Harleston Road without a pulley. If you go down there in the mornings, the bus stops for everyone. Everyone has to queue both ways because they're already queuing because they can't get past the little area of shops further down the road. It's already an issue at the moment. So I'd say anything that we can do in as far as infrastructure goes has to be earlier rather than later, but it will still be difficult. I'd also like to bring up the cycle route. Yes, I am a cyclist. I spend a lot of time on my bike. I've cycled into Lodge Farm and cycled around at lunchtimes as well. No roads around there are any use for cycling at the moment, and I fail to see how you are actually going to link anything up cycle-wise. On the new Sandy Lane, on the current relief road, there is a cycle lane down there, and there is a walkway down there, obviously, but it is slightly partial as well. It actually does stop in the middle, and it's rather difficult to use. And then when you get to the end, you can't go anywhere. I mean, I just don't know how we ensure that the actual links do actually link up and are sensible. But I would urge officers to ensure that that actually happens through the conditioning, that the links are genuine, the cycle routes are not in conflict with cars or people's driveways, where you actually have to get off your bike all the time to let people out of their gateways. Otherwise, these sort of things are completely useless and we're just paying lip service to it all the time. It's got to be functional and it's got to work. That goes, and I also mentioned the health centre as well. It's no good having money for health centres built into these plans and proposed sites for them that aren't wanted by the medical practices. The medical practices have to want to go there. It has to be viable for them to go there. And if it's not, they won't go there. And we'll end up with no medical practice in the vicinity of this development. It needs to be joined up thinking for anything happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wesley. Councillor Owen-Swint.
I think Councillor was...
Well, I have you next on my list.
Oh, sorry, I wanted to hear a bit more. It's going to be a bit jumpy because I have a few things to say. First, about the school. The provision for the school will be by the DFE or will it be via an academy? Because at this time we don't know exactly what is the school or where the school will be. Also, according to Councillor Sheffield, he said 11 years. In the document, at one point, page page 30, it said 18 years to complete, and page 78, it said 11 years. It's, for me, are the 18 years a mistake? Because if that takes 18 years to complete, I am at loss to understand why people will move in a development who will take 18 years to complete. You don't want to live in a building site or close to a building site for so long. 18 years sounds a long thing. So could I have clarification?
We'll do that in a second.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thirdly, because in a lot of those development, it's about the road in the development and are they adopted, non-adopted. It's about the lighting of the road. And now we have some kinetic energy on the road. Could we have a condition that the development could be lit by kinetic energy due to the road? Because when you go in and out of the development with all the cars which will use it, the lighting should be efficient, but not efficient, not too efficient, in order to leave a bit of countryside, because with a big development like that, the edge of Duston could see dark sky. And I am always amazed when I get to Northampton, or even between Brixhurst and Northampton, we don't have a lot of nice sky, which show how much our urbanization or urban life has creeping on the countryside. So that is all what I have to say, and also I will agree with my colleague. We should secure the CCG and the doctor surgery before at a certain point, and I don't know if we can have a condition, but could we have the condition about the road kinetic energy, the condition about the CCG, if we could secure it before X number of dwelling. And finally, with all the money, because we are talking a lot of seed money, a lot of Section 106, and we give the money to the penny. If the development is for 11 years or 18 years, are we sure that those monies are indexed and indexed in the right, with the right formula? Thank you so much.
Officer, can you clarify? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Firstly, in terms of the reference to page 30 and the build-out rate, so the 18 years was included in the applicant's original planning statement. I think we've had some more recent information indicates it might be quicker than that, quicker build-out rate. But obviously, as Rebecca said earlier in her opening comments, it will very much depend on the market. And that market could change markedly over the next, well, throughout the build of the site. So there's obviously some uncertainty about exactly how long this development will take. Perhaps the point is there's no absolute certainty in terms of the size number of years over which the site would be constructed.
Thank you, Richard. Any other points?
Thank you, Charles. I'll just come back on a couple. In terms of the provision of the school, that is within the first phase of the development. We're still negotiating with the County Council over that, so it could either be academy or it could, you know, we haven't got that level of detail at the moment. With reference to the lighting, there is a condition which refers to sensitive lighting, and we will give consideration to light pollution. And then finally, just in terms of the health centre, there's a contribution towards health facilities. The consultation responses from NHS England and the CCG have stated that the smaller surgeries just aren't part of their future business plan, as there's no real prospect of any doctors actually coming forward on site, which is why we are looking towards the expansion of St Luke. So it's not an ideal situation to be in, but those funds are available, and that seems to be the way forward from the advice that we're getting from the specialists.
Thank you.
Sorry, can we put a condition about Kinetic Road?
We can certainly investigate that.
Yes, if it's not too expensive, because that will add to the sustainability of the development.
Okay. Thank you. Now, Councillor Ritchie, did you want to speak? I'm not
Yes.
sure about your hand, your arm or your hand.
No, some of the issues have been covered by the other members of the committee. I was concerned about the prospect of this being a development site for 18 years. It would make the Middlemore roads look as if they had been done quite quickly. But even if we are in a position that, okay, that the full construction of the site as planned will depend on any changes in the future market, I find that slightly worrying. But my apologies if this is actually stated somewhere in these many pages. But you say that the centre facilities, is there going to be a hub that is going to be there in the next couple of years, irrespective of how many houses have been built at that stage? I mean, to me, where a primary school goes, it's actually quite important, because a primary school becomes a social centre. It's where people go and meet when they're collecting their children and everything else. We've spoken often in the past that we are not simply constructing estates, we are about building places that have got a sense of a community about them. And unless we make sure that the local centre arrives early and that the local school is there, we are not going to, we are not going to have that. We've just got fields covered with houses. I do accept that we need to have houses. So let me just come back to that point in a moment. There's an issue that I didn't want to ignore, and that's on page 78, the second paragraph. I get a little bit excited about this because I've never before, I don't think before, we've seen an application that actually talks about the use of photovoltaic panels and so on, and other energy-saving devices, approaches for using renewable energy. It is there. It is remarkably imprecise. it talks about improved building fabric efficiency as being the most important built into the units, which rather implies that the other bullet points are not things that are going to be built into the units. How many houses are going to be built with solar panels, or with heat pumps, or other forms of energy-saving devices or clean energy devices? There's reference to flue gas heat recovery systems. Are any of these houses going to be using gas or other non-renewable sources for heating? And if so, why? We are, after all, we're obliged now to talk about sustainability, and there are many other councils that seem to build into their planning policies that there has got to be an assurance that a certain proportion, anyway, of energy needs will be met from renewable or at least clean sources. I would be interested to know just what that paragraph actually means, what the developer intends, what the developer guarantees will actually happen. However, back to my main issue with this. I know that, I mean, I hate to see nice bits of open countryside being covered with houses, but I accept that we have got a housing crisis, and we have got to put houses somewhere, and this may well be the best place for putting them, provided we can get round all the issues that have been raised about infrastructure and what the effect is going to be on the roads, how people are going to get to their homes and to work and all that sort of stuff. But if all that can be put into place, okay, this might be a place where we've got to accept that we are going to have our houses. The nature of our housing crisis is that we have got so many people who don't have decent homes because they can't afford to buy, and they can't find places that they can afford to rent. Now, in this particular area, we do actually allow developers in the policies to build estates where only just barely a third of the homes they build are affordable. But here we have a proposal that is going to knock that down to overall 26%, and we are going to need to wait and listen through the first phase before there are any affordable homes at all. I would be grateful if anybody could tell me when was the last time that the consultant that DDC uses when there are challenges to the viability of schemes, if they have got to have the standard rate of affordable homes? I just can't remember any occasion in which the consultant that we used came back and said that a developer actually had got it wrong. But I may be wrong. Perhaps you don't actually hear about these things. It strikes me that what we have here is simply, an open site for building on. It's not as if we're starting off with a particularly difficult building site, or if we're talking about adapting a very old building where there may be high costs in making in making a conversion that might make it difficult to make the resultant homes affordable. I don't see that there is any excuse here for allowing a developer to build for profit rather than to build the homes that people actually need. And I'm going to put against anything that allows, unless we defer the application until another meeting, so that we can actually look at what are the developers' calculations, and what are the calculations that have been done by the consultant that has advised the officers. I could recall having rows over this before, and we've never been allowed to see them. Without actually seeing that, I am against this proposal unless there is a guarantee overall 35%, and that much of that 35%, or at least in the initial phase, we are not starting off with buildings, they don't provide any affordable homes at all, because that is not what this district needs. It's simply what the developers need in terms of their products.
I have to say, Councillor Ritchie, had you, you probably had a good reason not to, but had you been at the training session that took place before this, you would have been able to answer certainly the last 10 minutes of your speech. You'd have had great information why. This council supports very much, not every council does, affordable housing and the purpose of, and negotiates quite well, but I'm sure I'll leave you to the officers to tell you the reason why the percentage is that. Over to you again, officers.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, clearly a viability appraisal case will only be submitted to us where the developers have already done some work and are of the view from their perspective that the scheme isn't viable at the policy level. So that's kind of the starting point. We appoint our own independent assessor of the work that comes in from the developer. That will pose serious challenges to the work that comes in from the development industry. And the negotiation takes place, and usually that negotiation is increasing the percentage of affordable housing that is originally put forward by the developer. You asked a specific question in terms of have we ever rejected an appraisal and found that the scheme is viable. The answer is yes, we have. It was a small scheme rather than a large scheme we're talking about here, but a scheme called Ashby, where there was a claim that the scheme wasn't viable. We appointed our own assessor and he found that it was viable, so we are achieving affordable on that particular scheme. But just go back to the discussion that we've been having throughout this debate about infrastructure first and having early infrastructure. If you're having infrastructure early in the development scheme of this scale, there's a very, very significant cost attached to that. Somebody has to pay for that, and the person that's paying for that is the developer. So if we're asking for all of that asking for all of that infrastructure early in the project, we can't also have the affordable housing that we might like. There has to be some sort of trade-off between the two. But in this particular case, yes, it is of some concern that we're not getting any affordable in the early phase. We're going to understand why that is. It's because we're getting lots of infrastructure early on to deliver the benefits that you've been talking about. But in the last phase, which is the largest phase, we will be getting policy compliant affordable housing. And overall, the affordable housing level that we're using on this site is significantly higher than on other schemes in this part of the town. And Rebecca briefly took you through those in her opening presentation. So the consultant working on our behalf has done a good job in getting the best deal that we think we can get on this particular scheme.
And to also add it, I believe it's improper for members to be involved in consulting between developers and experts to decide. I'm sorry, but it's improper for members to be involved in that. That's for officers. We make the policy, the officers carry that out, and they do carry that out properly.
Chair, with respect, it is improper for us to be asked to take responsibility for taking decisions on planning applications if we feel that there is evidence that has not been put in front of us.
That is true, but I'm saying it's not in this case, but I understand what you're saying. Back to the officer.
Can I just come back, thank you, Chair, just come back to a point in terms of the viability. It has, as a result of negotiations with the consultant, the level of affordable housing has increased during the process of the application from originally, I think it was overall 21%, so we have managed to increase it to 26% overall.
Thank you. Right, I'm going to Councillor James next, then I'll come back to Councillor Shepherd. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. I've listened to the debate so far, and I've certainly read the officer's report. As far as I'm concerned, this development ticks all the right boxes. It provides homes for people to buy. It provides an element of affordable housing, much needed affordable housing. It provides community facilities, sport facilities, and so on, in a local centre. It's situated in an area of Northampton which, to my surprise, hasn't been looked at when expanding Northampton. no doubt this was due to the bad decisions that were made by Northampton councillors in the 1970s and before, and I will stick by that, of which successive Northampton councillors, borough councillors, have had to cope with the consequences of those bad decisions. It's an area that was predominantly, at that edge of Northampton, occupied by mainly blue-collar workers who worked at places locally, which were British Timken, Express Lifts, the Metoy Company, Airflow Streamlines, and all the other odd bits of industrial that came along as the 60s progressed in the 1970s. It is a very sustainable location. It is accessible both to Northampton and to the open countryside outside. And I think there are some very good benefits to the community as a whole in accepting this development in both applications. So I've no hesitation in recommending with this one that we go with officers' advice and approve both applications.
Right, so you're making a proposal that we approve the large one, which is the first one, 0889, and the second one.
Yes.
First of all, do you have a seconder for approving the first one, the large one? Thank you. Would you wish to speak, Councillor Chandler?
Thank you.
Right, and secondly, do you have a seconder for approving the smaller one, the second one? Again, Councillor Chandler. Again, do you wish to speak?
No, thank you, Chairman.
Right. Any more comments?
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Sorry, Councillor Shepherd's next. Sorry.
That's fine.
And then yourself.
Chairman, thank you. Forgive me if I express a degree of naivety. I don't attend your committee very often, as you know. But when I welcomed earlier the delivery of the local centre in phase 1, I took at face value the list of 7 items headed under that local centre, from retail down to community and healthcare facility. Of course, all those items are not directly at the moment, I suspect, in the control of Law or indeed anybody. Law doesn't have a public house operator ready and waiting on the wings to walk in. But I had understood that those items would be sort of conditioned as to be in place before one moves on to phase 2. And we've heard earlier about a query about, for example, the provision of healthcare facility. And then I read the precise words on the report, and of course we're not told that the local centre will contain these elements. We're told the welfare centre will contain elements, indicative uses, containing indicative uses are as follows. So the indication on the report at the moment is that these are the sort of things we could expect to see in a centre. Now, to the extent that I'm entirely supportive of the application, given that all these items are going to be delivered, what degree of confidence do the officers have in being able to deliver all these facilities? When we talk about healthcare facility, are we possibly looking at a healthcare facility off-site or some healthcare facility that doesn't involve doctors? How are we going to end up with a document committing or limiting, rather, the development of phase 2 onwards, conditioned on delivery of whatever we got in phase 1 local centre? Is that clear?
Yeah.
Well, in terms of the local centre, I think as I briefly mentioned earlier that the section 106 will cover the local centre. We're still negotiating that, but there will be trigger points.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to ensure that it is provided by a certain time. There's also draft condition 4, which is in the late items, which sets out the development shall comprise no more than, and it talks about the local centre, it talks about the area of land and the hectares, and what the retail units, the uses of those retail units. It will include a community hall, We are still in negotiation with the agent as to what exactly that will be, whether it will be for sports facilities, some sort of community hub. It could be for a health facility, but as I've also said, that the advice that we're getting back isn't that it's unlikely to be on site. It will be off site for the expansion of St Luke's, but that facility is there if the situation changes.
Does that cover your answers?
Right,
Mr.
well,
Shepherd?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Frost.
Thank you. Just a small point. Following from what Councillor Ritchie said, this point about flue gas heat recovery systems. I thought that after 2025 you weren't allowed to put gas boilers in new houses, and since this development's going to happen over 18 years, why are we talking about gas heat recovery systems? That doesn't make one of those two things can't be correct. Either I'm wrong in thinking that after 2025 you won't be able to put gas boilers in houses, or they're wrong in thinking they can. I don't know. Which of us is wrong? Which of us is right?
I think in terms of that in page 78 of the report, it says that the new homes will be built in accordance with the prevailing building regulations. So they will, because it's such a long development, they will have to be in accordance with the building regulations at that time.
Okay, so if the
So
regs change, then
it
that'll
will
change. Well.
change.
Okay.
And there is also a condition in the late items for electrical charging points.
Okay, thank you. And then the point you made, thank you for that. You said that you're still renegotiating, or sorry, still negotiating on the section 106. It's just a general point. If that's still that being the case, why is it more sensible to be discussing this application now? Wouldn't it be smarter to get that negotiation done, and then we know what we're dealing with? Or is that too simple?
Thank you, Jerry. The application's been with us since 2017, so we have been negotiating the 106 throughout that period.
Yeah.
They are extensive discussions, especially because it's between the two authorities. So we are virtually there with an agreement. It's just that it's just that there are still final negotiations tonight. But the heads of terms are all in here, so it's clear exactly what the development will be providing.
I can't see, for the sake of waiting for a few more months, then we've got facts rather than, what ifs. That's just the bit I don't really understand. But
We'll get our legal agency to chip in.
Councillor Frost, generally on these large applications, or even on smaller applications, both the council and the applicant like to have a draft 106 worked up and ready. There are occasions when an application is approved and we literally sign off the 106 the next day. It wouldn't really be a good use of time, and within the constraints that applications have to be, if they're approved, have to be granted, in as much that to work up a 106 on something as complex as this takes a very, very long time. So the application will come in and the ball will start to be will start rolling on drafting the obligations within the 106, because they are complex agreements to draft.
yeah, okay, so it would delay things, but I guess the upside of that is that we're dealing with the one that was made earlier. We'd all be a bit more knowledgeable on things like infrastructure and things, wouldn't we? But that's a good explanation, thank you. Chairman, question for you, if I may. Just on the technical point of view about late submissions, do you have a view about sort of a cut-off point in terms of what is and isn't acceptable? I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but presumably if the late submissions around to 50 or 100 pages, would you use your sort of chairman's override and say, sorry guys, we're going to need to persuade this? I just wondered if there's a number in your mind, because I think this is quite a few pages, and I'll put my hand up and say I haven't had a chance to look at these. If everyone else has, then full respect. But
I have to say in answer to that is no, I don't have a figure in my mind. I've been on this committee 32 years, and I've always accepted late representations, however big they be.
okay.
They're late representations. The committee should see them, people should see them, and be able to digest them even at the 12th hour. That's my opinion.
Irrespective of how many
Yeah,
pages there are.
irrespective.
Through you, Chairman, I wouldn't be very happy if it was 100 pages.
Right.
This was an unusual situation in the 8+ years I've been coming regularly to planning committee. Late representations are not usually that big.
That's
But
right.
this is a very big complex application going across 2 different councils. And the draft was not advanced enough when the original papers came through. That's why the latest draft was decided to come with the most up-to-date draft due committee. But the heads of terms are all in there, we're there or thereabouts, and that's why we've gone ahead with this application and it will go to South Council next week, rather than pulling a report and doing something to each committee.
Right, I've got 2 more indications to speak after that. I'd like to go to the vote because I think we've had a fair airing of the applications. First of all, Councillor Matton and then Councillor Irving Swift. Okay?
Thank you. I haven't been involved in planning for long, but in the short period that I have been, I was aware of lots of houses on Monkmoor Park who needed a school, and there was a lot of complaints about the fact that the school wasn't being built, and I believe that the council actually had to take on responsibility for getting that school built. I wondered if it might be possible as a condition to have an undertaking that the infrastructure will be put in place, not just in phase 1, but before there are hundreds of houses full of families all needing that infrastructure. Can we have it at an earlier stage than just by the end of phase 1 at all?
Very well, officer.
It will be renegotiation with,
I understand
with the
that.
county
So
council.
I'm asking, can that be negotiated?
We can certainly talk to the county council
Thank
to
you.
see what would be reasonable for us to suggest.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Irving Swift.
I don't want to add, but by that time we will be in unitary territory, so it will be one planning and we will have maybe more control in what we do. So, but that is another thing. I would add page 85. It is about section 106, and in fact it will come back to the committee if the executive director is not satisfied with section 106 doing his job. What is, could you give us?
That is so. If the director is not happy with any part of the 106 bit, she would come back to committee.
But with a view of what Councillor Shepherd has said, and about his shopping list of what has to be delivered by the section 106, if, I don't know, X% of that list is not delivered, will it automatically come back to us?
It'll be if something dramatically alters from what is laid out in the report, she would certainly come back to this committee.
As per the council's constitution.
Thank you
Right.
so much.
I'm going to a vote now. I think we've had enough debate on it. We're going to debate. Vote the smaller one first, because it seems more sensible. So we're looking at planning applications 0890, which is the smaller of the 2. We have a proposal the application be approved, which has been seconded. All those in favour, please show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Those against?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Right, that application is approved. And now we're on 0889, again, which has been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Those against?
4.
The application is approved in both cases. Oh yeah, we have to swap officers over for a second, so there'll be a 3-minute break if you like. So if people do want to go, they're very welcome to leave now. Right, we will resume as we're ready to 0386, which is in Woodford. Well, I call it Woodford Hole, so I will still call it that. Over to you, officers.
Thank you, Chairman. Members may recall that an application came before committee in May of last year, and it's resolved to grant temporary planning permission for the continued use of part of the existing car park at the Woodford Social Club for the station of mobile trailer to sell hot food. The temporary permission has expired and the current application seeks permanent permission for the use of this car park to continue siting of the mobile trailer together with an ancillary jet van and cage for housing of gas patrols, all in connection with the sale of hot food. Members may also recall that in granting permission, members considered the temporary consent was necessary in order to assess the effect of the use on the area, including the impact on the immunity of local residents by risen noise and odours, and the impact on highway stages resulting from using access into and out of the site, impact on the visual immunity of the area. And we'll see within the report that representations received from both the parish council and neighbours raised concerns relating to all these matters. With regards to visual impact on this part of the car park was previously considered to be acceptable, and it should be noted that the size and appearance of the trailer remains unchanged. However, this is now joined by a transit van and a red cage for gas containers. The white van was brought onto the site during approximately October-November of last year and is used for providing storage of cooking oil, canned drinks and foodstuffs of some rudimentary washing facilities, possibly connected to the club drainage. The red cage is a necessity to address the matters of health and safety, but it's acknowledged that the van does result in expansion of the site over the previous submission. The current position of the proposal is barely visible from Main Road. However, the access road, which runs alongside the east side of the site and connects Hinton Road to Pool Street, does form a public right-of-way, and there's very limited screening between this and the proposal. The development would therefore be extremely prominent at this point. The applicant argues that there would be no difference to a trailer and van being driven on and off the car park on a daily basis. And whilst officers accept this could be the case, the fact remains that the proposal has surface connected to the club and would be fixed in one location immediately to the public right-of-way. In these circumstances, it is considered that development would detract from enjoyment of the public right-of-way. In order to address these concerns, the applicant would advise from officers is exploring measures to mitigate visual impacts of the proposal through a combination of additional planting and alternatives to timber coverings and enclosures. It's considered these conditions to secure the mitigation measures would sufficiently address concerns regarding impact on the visual amenity. Since the granting of the temporary consent, environmental health officers have visited the site on numerous occasions to investigate complaints regarding to noise from the use of the generator and odours. Complaints relating to the use of the generator have been resolved by connecting the trailer to the social club electricity supplies. And whilst environmental health officers do not dispute the proposal was a source of odour, it was deemed that it was not experienced at such a level that it would constitute a statutory nuisance. Furthermore, noise and disturbance from comings and goings were also considered to be not considered to be significantly different from that associated with patrons entering and leaving the car park via their existing access. The current application seeks consent to operate from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. Monday to Sunday, where the temporary consent restricted hours of operation from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. from Tuesday to Sunday. The reason cited was to protect the residential needs and nearby properties, and officers recommending approval of the previous applications conclude that the hours will not conflict with closing hours of the licensed premises. It is accepted that there have been technical breaches of this condition. However, having regard to the conclusions of the investigations by officers, there is no evidence that these breaches have caused any adverse impact on the residential community for taking enforcement action. In regard to the experience of the use over the past 12 months, officers considered the working condition could be made more explicit to afford certainty to all parties. We're therefore suggesting that trading hours be defined as hours for the sale of hot food or drinks for consumption off the premises should only be allowed to take place between 3 p.m. and 10 p.m. Obviously, outside these hours, food preparation and cleaning would still be permitted to take place. Regarding the highway safety, access to the site is via the existing access that serves the car park to the rear of the social club. There's noticed concerns raised site conflicts between pedestrians, use of the social club and the customers visiting the facility. In the 12 months since the granting of the consent, no traffic incidents as a direct result of this have been reported to officers, and the County Highways officers raised no objections to the proposal. It's therefore considered that whilst there may have been instances of inconsiderate parking on occasions, the proposal will not have adverse impact on highway safety. Overall, it's acknowledged that during the past 12 months, the consent has been subject to numerous complaints. However, investigations by officers have demonstrated that concerns regarding operating outside consented hours, health and safety, noise and odour do not constitute a statutory nuisance or have been resolved. The County Highways officer is satisfied the proposal does not compromise highway safety, and no instance of crime or antisocial behaviour related to the use have been reported. In regard to these matters, it's considered there are no technical impediments in allowing a permanent permission for the proposal, subject to the conditions cited in the report. We're therefore recommending this application be approved, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Two speakers. First of all, Mr. Willis, who's against the application.
Okay, thank you. I'm here today representing 15 homes that are in close proximity to the car park of the social club itself. There's 3 slides I've prepared just to kind of illustrate some of these points. I'll take us back to Mr. Allen, who was the case officer early last year, February last year, and he made 2 clear comments in his statement, and he said that ultimately the owner would be encouraged to relocate to a suitable permanent unit in a town or village centre setting. He went on to say that at present time I do not envisage that such form of a development represents a suitable long-term means of dispensing takeaways. In the last 12 months, we've had 3 shops to let in our village high street. There's one that's up for let. It's right alongside an Indian takeaway that we've got there. But as far as I'm concerned, there's been no representation to consider any of these retail outlets. And with that, there's been some lost opportunity to satisfy everybody in the village that it could have been moved into a purpose-built location in our retailing area. I'll go to the next slide, please. You've already shown some of these kind of pictures in it, but the site itself, it's a disgrace, and health and safety remains a concern. We talked about getting a cage on site to keep gas bottles secure. Here's some pictures here where of an evening the doors left open to the gas containers. There's general detritus and rubbish all around the site. The second slide there, and it's been pointed to health and safety, but very little's been done. We've got fat running down the open outlet into the car park adjacent to the public footpath and our neighbours' gardens. So the applicant himself demonstrates little regard for the appearance and public hygiene of the site. It attracts vermin and scavenging birds and adversely affects homes and enjoyment of the public right of way which is adjoining the site. So local residents now have enjoyed of not just smells and unfiltered cooking smells. Originally, now it's going to be 6 days a week, not 5 days a week. So it's going to expand. Next slide, please. As we anticipated at this meeting and our parish council meeting, we talked about expansion of the site. The owner of the site has already said to locals that he's going to bring a pizza wagon on site at some point. In the notes of the latest report, it says that the applicant seeks to retain a permanent basis the area within the grounds of the local social club for the stationing of a mobile trailer associated with gas cage, the parking of the transit van, all used in connection with the solar hot food. The planning application itself, though, doesn't ask for any of that. It purely asks for the siting of a mobile catering van. That is the application that's been put forward. So I and the locals are concerned that the Daventry District Council planning seem to have expanded the submission on behalf of the applicant, including trading times.
Can you wind up, please?
I will wind up. So the van that's here now, it's a permanently sited van, it's got mains connection, it's not roadworthy, so we have a van there permanently. And the authorised expansion demonstrates that the operator has a disregard for any rules of planning condition and has complete consent for local residents.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. The next speaker is, I hope I pronounced the name correctly, Zengi. Zengi, applicant.
The first thing is the van is not connected to the main. That's the drivable van, and as we all know, this is a car park. We can drive that one every day, in and out. That is for storage. Yes, it was connected to the main with the flexible hose, but we cancelled that. It was flexible, so you can drive in the morning, connect it and disconnect it in the evening and drive away. But that will cost us a diesel, so that's why we are leaving there, and it is a car park. When it comes to the gas cage, that is a must. We need to put in a cage. The bottles needs to stay in the cage, lock it, and we speak to the environmental health and the environmental protection, so the council aware about the cage, and even Mr. Allen aware about the cage. So a van can be drive in and out every day, but as we say, and the cage is there. When it comes to that picture, which is says rubbish, there was, I can see a bag, a plastic bag there, so that could be coming from anywhere. And when you want to open that box, it's not really hard to open it. As we can see, we are closed it, so it's not really hard to open that gas bottle cage. But we can check that. If we know the date, we can check that on cameras, whoever opened it. Because we had a lot of complaint about closing late, opening early, and none of them was truth. And a lot more than that, you know, wasn't truth. So I'm concerning that picture is, don't want to say it really. We opened between 3 and 10. So this is the time we need. We don't need to open later than 10 o'clock. Yes, 10-15 minutes for a cleaning. This is for all the takeaways. You need at least 20 minutes for a preparation and at least 20-30 minutes for a cleaning. So we are trying to reduce that as much as we can do. And now we are opening at 4 o'clock. I know we did apply for 3 o'clock, but now we are opening at 4 o'clock. So, well, we'll still apply from 3 to 10. So then that will cover my preparation without making any complaint. And, well, I never say I'm going to bring a pizza van, and for a little village, pizza van wouldn't work there. This is not a plan. I don't have a plan for a pizza van, but if somebody else has, I don't know. I never say that. And none of the residents will say, you did say it, because I got pizza shop in Daventry, so I don't need it. I don't need a pizza van over there. And pizza van, you can't make pizza in a van anyway. Pizza is really complicated business, you can't do it. That's not a plan.
Could you wind up now, please, sir?
Yeah, that's all. Well, I have been done a lot. I tried to work with the council. So I got super quiet generator, and because some people wasn't happy, I just spent a lot of money and get electric to the van. It's not cheap. I can work with the generator, it's gonna cost less than that. So I've done everything I can do, really. It is,
Okay,
yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Two local members, I'm going to take ladies first. So, Councillor Griffin, you're first on.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I start, I am a member of the social club. I've been for years, never been on the committee, haven't discussed this with anybody there. So just that you know. I'm concerned about permanency. There have been acknowledged breaches of planning control. 5 different officers have found that at times odour would be evident and annoying, but not at statutory level. Neighbours have made their objections clear. Odours cannot be controlled from this type of vehicle, and site expansion has already taken place. The only relief from odours, currently it's on Mondays, but in my view it should also apply to Sundays, a traditional family occasion for Sunday lunch, etc., and use of local gardens. In our neighbourhood plan, under WH3, the area is designated as a character area. I visited the site on Tuesday. I was not happy to see the public right-of-way imposed upon by an unattractive trailer van and cage, not only visually, but also when being used in operation for the business, and probable littering, but this is very difficult to control and continually control, and certainly with more impact than any motor vehicles using the car park, private motor vehicles. I welcome the conditions in the main, but object strongly to the inclusion of Mondays and Sundays. The conditions cannot totally ameliorate the ongoing problems, and a precedent will possibly be in place for further such businesses introducing a supposedly character area. I appreciate it's been difficult for officers to arrive at what they hope to be a balanced approval, and it will be very difficult indeed for them to continually process monitoring and enforcement of this business. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Councillor Griffin.
Thank you. Yeah, it's hard, isn't it, not to feel sad about this, because obviously there's a demand for this. It's obviously popular in the area. A lot of people use it, and Mrs. Engie seems like a very nice and entrepreneurial, industrious person, and doing what amounts to a kind of a local service in many ways. It's just all about the location, isn't it? I think if it was in a different location, there wouldn't be any objections. Before I sort of comment on a few specific things, can I just ask, when we had the last May, when it came before the committee we gave temporary permission, did we, I guess inadvertently, give permission for the white van? Because even though it can be moved, it's the case, isn't it, that when a vehicle isn't moved for 12 months, it's permanent. So did we give permission for that?
The consent was granted in May for just the trailer.
Yeah.
The van arrived in October, November of last year, following the consent, granting the consent.
So is it fair, just so we understand the background, is it fair to say that was a, that was slightly against the rules, you could say? That was.
The actual siting of the van on a permanent basis then results in an expansion of the site itself. if Mr Daventry is prepared to drive the van on there and off there every single day, then that in itself would not require.
Sure, but because that didn't happen, it was, albeit technically, a breach of the permission that we gave. Is that a fair comment? Okay, yeah. Cool. Because I think I can see how this is how this has happened, because I can see how I know the EHL officer has been loads of times, but I can see how if towards the end of closing time that a car turns up and just stays there and doesn't come out to buy a kebab or a meal or whatever, if I was operating the kebab van, I would kind of take the hint and perhaps close up fairly shortly, and I can see how that would lead to environmental health officers concluding that everything was happening as it should be. And I can also see how if you turn up on a day when the wind is blowing in a direction other than towards you, you might not be able to smell the odour. And I can also see that if you turn up and you don't see rats and vermin sort of running around, you might conclude that there aren't rats and vermin. But I can also see how that if you've got as much sort of food and sort of fattened things lying around, I don't think it takes a huge sort of stretch of imagination to see how maybe, just maybe, there's the odd little quadruped that's sort of tempted by things down there. So I find it believable that food has resulted in vermin. And I can see how, if you live nearby, that's, shall we say, suboptimal. But it's often reminded that we, that in order to raise objections, so I do with a heavy heart, because as I say, I love the idea of this facility, and I think most people in Woodford do. It's a great shame that between us all we haven't found a way of showing Mr Zangi to take on one of those empty units. But I know when you object, you have to give specific reasons, and you have to quote a specific planning policy. So I'm going to have a start of doing that, if I may. And please correct me if I've got any reason mistaken. But in Daventry District, say local plan policy EN42 is all about enhancing surroundings. I'm not sure that this facility does enhance surroundings. In the Daventry District Settlements Countryside Local Plan Part 2, RA1 obliges us to take into account the form, character and the setting of the village. Once again, I'm not sure how this complements that. ENV10 says that things we give permission for must be high quality and, I'm trying to read my writing here, inclusive design. Excuse me, well, you get the gist. And in the West Northamptonshire Joint Core Strategy, S10 talks about sustainable development principles. I've got them listed here, and I can't see how this is compatible with that. And finally, policy BN9 in the same document talks about maintaining and improving air quality. I'm not sure this kebab van does that. So those are my specific points. That's all I've got to say.
You're making a proposal that it be refused?
Yeah, like I said, with a heavy heart.
Do you have a second? Do you have a second now? Oh, two hands went up then. Are you both? Are you seconding it?
Yes, I'm seconding it.
And you're seconding it as well?
Yeah, I'm happy for Councillor James to second it.
Okay, go on, Councillor
In
James.
the absence of anybody else, I will.
Do you wish to speak?
Well, only very briefly, because I think...
That's it then. Thank you.
It says it all. I don't think it's appropriate in a small village anyway to have this sort of arrangement. And it strikes me there are hygiene problems, there are smells. I mean, heaven knows, you go to Northampton and there's that burger van on the market square, you can smell it 100 yards off, and it gets worse if they don't change the back. You come into Daventry sometimes, if there's a burger van there, you can smell it. And it's not everyone that can tolerate those smells. Sometimes it's good, and they think, oh, I wouldn't mind a few onions myself or something. But most of the time, it's quite annoying actually. Now, if you look at that map, there are houses nearby, there are allotments nearby, so that means there are people who want to sit in their gardens in the daytime, and there are people who want to work on the allotments, tending the brassicas in the daytime. It must be quite annoying, really, to have the smells of a burger kebab van wafting over the hedge. So, A, I don't think it's the appropriate location. I think there are hygiene considerations. I think there are smells which can be obnoxious, and it's inappropriate, and it's more appropriate to a proper fixed establishment like a shop in the local grade. So I'm quite pleased to second the proposal.
Okay, Chung, you want to come back on one of those points?
I think there's just one item we'd like to come back on. I've mentioned air quality as one of the concerns we want to add to the reason for refusal. What I will say is that officers before you have visited the site, not only once or twice, but environmental health officers have visited the site on numerous occasions. So look at different aspects. One is noise, one is health and safety, and obviously others is to do with odours, including the air quality. Now, whilst it was deemed that, yes, it is a source of odour, it certainly was not a statutory nuisance. So I would caution against adding that particular element to the reason for refusal which you're proposing.
I can see your point, it's hard to prove, isn't it?
Can I also say that air quality generally in planning terms relates back to the environmental air quality criteria, which would be around the southern area, an air quality management area. So lots of development around Northampton has to have lots of sustainable use of alternative.
Right.
We talked about it in the previous application, but this is not an air quality management area. So using the term air quality,
I can see that point.
Would be subject.
Maybe against the spirit of it, nothing else.
Okay, before I get to the next speech, I'm going to tell you that I live 4 yards from a Chinese restaurant, 12 yards from a chip shop, 20 yards from a pizza shop, 50 yards from another pizza shop, 150 yards from one Indian restaurant, and 150 yards from another Indian restaurant. I just thought I'd tell you. Yeah, I noticed some smells, but you get used to them and they're pretty close, and you end up as big as well. Right, Councillor Smith, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, it's a question. There was a time, I believe, I could be wrong, after now, there was a kitchen odour assessment that would come along with a planning application, and that's no longer the case. Is that, first of all, is that true or false?
Sorry, Councillor, could you repeat
A
that?
kitchen odour assessment, there was a time where that would be asked for. Is that correct or not?
Kitchen odour assessment. That's
Planning
not a planning
application.
issue.
Well, I don't agree because I've spent some time looking into this, so I'll carry on anyway. The question would have been that councils no longer need to use that, but 97% of them do, and what do we reference? So that's the first question. And then moving on to the odours coming from this establishment. There's a number of areas, I'm sure you know, for the Environmental Protection Act to look at when you're looking at issues. One of those, which actually cross-references back to RA1 potentially, there's a whole list of them here, and I'll list them actually. So when a smell is assessed, there's a number of things that need to be assessed. Where it's coming from, the character of the area, RA1 now, the number of people affected nearby, and it's a village, so there's going to be less people affected, but there's people affected also. If the smell interferes with the quality of life of people nearby, for example, if they avoid using their gardens. This is all in the EPA. How often is the smell present? Well, it's going to be 6 days now. And the characteristics of the smell. Not everybody likes that, I do. So, you know, this I think I'm in agreement with the proposal to refuse this station, because I don't see how this can really have been looked at. You know, you got 15 visits from EHO. That's ridiculous, and it's a cost to us to do this. That worries me. I don't think that's going to become less, that's going to become more. So I don't know the office advice, that's for sure.
Okay, Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you. I wouldn't, just following Councillor Smith's comments, I wouldn't be worried, or at least judge the application in terms of the number of visits that officers are needed to make. Officers will no doubt make visits in response to complaints that are made, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the complaints were justifiable complaints. So I'd be slightly cautious about working on that basis. I'm trying to remember back to the discussion that we had when we granted the temporary permission. And was it not the case that if you took the village as a whole, there were many more people who wanted that facility to be there than there were who objected? Now, I know it's easy to want to have this facility that provides smelly kebabs at the opposite end of the village to you, and that it's, it is different if it's across your garden fence. So I find it quite a difficult one to weigh up, but it strikes me that it's the sort of issue that is not best resolved by this sort of judicial process. There are people who want, the kebab lorry or the kebab trailer to be there, because they enjoy kebabs, enjoy having something in a village that otherwise is a long way from anything else. They can't travel all the way to Long Buckley for your full range of menus that might be available.
You're very welcome.
This is really the only thing that they have actually got. I accept the point that was made that, wouldn't it be nice if, it used to be made of an occupied shop somewhere in the village centre. But I suspect that that requires a great deal more permanence that might be beyond the means of the applicant. But I just wonder if there's, this is the sort of thing in which there needs to be a wider community discussion that starts from the point of view there is going to be a facility selling kebabs somewhere in Woodford House or near to Woodford House 6 days a week between these times. Let's actually work out what the sensible thing to do would be to actually where to site it, so that it is fair to the applicant. It is fair to those who, at the moment, may not want to have the smell, however nice it may be, of kebabs every day of the week. Everybody has got to accept that they're going to have smells. At some stage, you can't object if you have got neighbours that really enjoy having a barbecue every day during the summer. They're the same sort of position. And I just feel there ought to be some way in which we should be able to defer this application and set up a process where there is arbitration and there is some mechanism where both sides can be heard and can be a sensible discussion between the two. Because I find it very difficult to come down and say, no, this should not be allowed. Because it is a service to the village, and it's a service that many people want. But on the other hand, I can understand that those who live close to the smell, maybe may see things quite differently. And I suspect that because they see things quite differently, that there is always a danger of there being imagined problems. Councillor James made a reference to to health complaints. I can't remember the precise wording. Well, you can get health complaints outside shops or outside your own kitchen. I just feel that this needs to be stripped of a lot of the. I would want to use the word prejudice because that's suggesting that it's something that is, too strong. But I just feel there needs to be a rationality about this. And that's why I cannot vote for it, but I certainly can't vote against it.
Thank you. Maria's coming back before I go to the next speaker.
Can I just clarify the environmental health position and smells in particular? There's been numerous visits, as Councillor Ritchie said, and that has been in response to complaints. Had those complaints been substantiated, there would be a different recommendation from environmental health regarding its planning application. So that's just to be really clear about that. That doesn't necessarily mean environmental health officers will have to forevermore be going to that site all the time. If that complaint's been investigated and those circumstances change, it doesn't need to keep being reinvestigated unless something changes. Councillor Smith talked about smell. We've actually got trained noses in environmental health, and I'm very familiar with this case, and lots of our certified trained noses have been out on site and are satisfied that there is no odour nuisance that would reach a level of which the council is obliged to act.
Thank you. Councillor Wesley.
Thank you, Chair. First, nobody wants a kebab van near their house, do they? Nobody wants another house built at the back of their house. Nobody wants anything done anywhere in reality, because you just want it as it is, and that is always the case. Unfortunately, we live on a small island, and we do come into a certain amount of conflict with each other. That is what happens. This van has been running for a year or so. I think the main issue is that, that the owner doesn't keep it in a particularly nice condition, and could probably do a little bit more to actually make it better for everyone that's in the surrounding area. And I would urge him to actually do that and try and make friends instead of enemies. I know that's going to be difficult, because we've obviously got people who really don't want this. But we do have to listen to our officers, and we have to have a set of rules that we all abide by. Now, if the officers go and assess smells and say that it is okay in that area, then we have to actually listen to that, because they're looking at the curry house up the road that's been mentioned. They're looking at Councillor Osborne's shops. You can't have one rule for one and one rule for another. It has to be at a base level and an understanding. If it conforms to that, then it conforms to it. And we have got the remedies here. We have got environmental health there to close this down if it doesn't meet those standards. This is the point. This is why we have environmental health officers. If it doesn't meet the standards, it will get closed down. If it meets the rules, it meets the rules. We can't just say we don't like it, but we can say we don't like it, but unfortunately that is how it is. And I have to say, I would just urge the proprietor to be a little bit more, try and be as amenable as you can within the village. It's obviously providing a service that people want, otherwise you wouldn't still be there. And I have to say, I'm going to go along with officers on this one.
Thank you. Councillor Irving Swift.
Yes, I will try to be brief. I remember when that planning application was in front of us. I am, like Councillor Wesley, a bit disappointed, because I thought when we gave the planning application, we gave the applicant a way to improve the relation with neighbours and to start up a bit his van. I mean, it's not very appealing to look at. It's a lot of rubbish. When you live in a small village, we take pride of their appearance. It must be very disheartening. Plus, I'm sure that the picture we saw of how the van looked is accurate. So therefore, my problem is that I do think we can't really go against officer advice on planning ground. But what I am worried is that we give a permanence to that van, and what I would like to do is, could we give a permit for another 3 years? Because what I do not like in the planning application is that if somebody comes and that van is sold, we have another van and so on. So for me, could the planning application be for the applicant only? And if he doesn't improve, I think in that case he might lose business. So could we have, if we can have the payment, it's with the owner of that kebab only, can that be done as it is, for example, for Gypsy and Travellers, where we put the applicant name with the planning application? I don't know if that, I've never seen it but I try to find a way around
Sorry,
the
can
problem.
we go 2 pictures back again, because Councillor says a lot of rubbish, but there is only one carrier van.
I'm sorry,
I'm
but
so
you can't
sorry.
speak, sir. You're not doing yourself any good by speaking. Sorry. Right.
And that
No,
particular point.
and you as well, for a moment. In answer to what you've just said, I've lost the track there. What was the point you was making? Oh, that's right, yeah. So we could consider the 3-year permission if this loses. So a proposition could be made if the proposition to refuse this, okay, that could be considered, okay. Now, you're making a point there,
I can understand.
because you're not in the speaker.
Well, I could understand the Speaker's frustration over this. Councillor Rivers has made the point that yes, villages pride themselves on their tidiness and their cleanliness. But surely in this case, if there is rubbish about, it is rubbish that has been dropped by villagers who have bought their kebabs, no doubt eaten the food, and leave the rubbish behind. The rubbish is not actually the rubbish of the person who has produced the kebabs. If there is a consent, is this not a case for the village, for the parish council to decide that it is going to put in a number of extra litter bins here? How much of that, if you just go back to the previous photograph, now, how much of that, if any, is actually owned by the applicant? I thought this was actually owned and attached to the, to the club. And if it doesn't look good, why do we not simply let the club do? Put in a few flower beds and perhaps a few nice benches on which people could sit outside and eat their kebabs. A litter bin for putting the packaging afterwards.
Sorry.
Through you, Chairman, I've heard that there's some concerns regarding the actual visual impact that the current trailer van poses on the public rights of way. And officers are agreeable that the van in its current state isn't particularly attractive. However, I just want to draw members' attention to the conditions. In particular, there is a condition 3, which requires that there's an area of land between the sides of an adjoining public right-of-way that is planted in accordance to a scheme to be submitted to the local planning authority. And that this area should be managed and maintained then with a management scheme to be agreed to the local planning authority as well. Condition 4 does equally require a waste management plan to be submitted, and that particular waste management plan is approved and operates in accordance with the details for the duration of the site's use, whilst it is used for the sale of hot food. And then, of course, there's condition 5, which requires that within 3 months of the date of the permission that the existing timber box to the rear of the mobile trailer, which just faces the public right-of-way, is removed and replaced with housing to match the colour and appearance of the trailer in order to improve the visual appearance of the proposal, and that no other fixed plant or housing is brought onto the site without the prior agreement of the local planning authority. Hopefully that those conditions will seek to achieve their enhancements and to improve the visual appearance of the trailer, which is before members tonight.
Thank you, John. I think I've got one more speaker in the list. Councillor Dance, did you wish to speak?
Yeah, so there was a few points that I noted down when reading through the documents. One of which I noticed that there had been numerous planning breaches, which, whether serious or not, a breach is a breach, and I think it shows an intention which, to my mind, is not good, unless I've made a complete mistake of what I've read. But I also noted down that, do residents still think there's a nuisance? I think we have evidence tonight that the answer to that is yes. How close are they? Well, we've seen the pictures. Close enough, as far as I can see. It seems to be that you can't remove the smells because of the structure of the van. I mean, it was mentioned, even Councillor Osborne mentioned its proximity, living next to other takeaways. If you've got a building, you can have ventilation that is vented upwards and outwards and much better construction. I think in the reading the application which failed at the old post office, if I've got those details correctly, it did mention that there were certain standards on buildings to have them at a certain height and so on, even though that application failed. So I don't see how a van like that can do anything to remove the smells. So does that affect the amenity of the residents? I think my answer has to be yes, in alignment with what Councillor Frost and Councillor James has recommended. So I think on that basis this is not a good application. I think we should go along with the current recommendation, not the officer's recommendation, but we should vote to refuse.
Thank you. Chuck, you want to come back on? Just say.
I don't want to repeat myself several times, but whilst there is, officers haven't denied that the van itself is a source of odour, but there are guidelines as to when that source of odour becomes a nuisance. Now, the evidence of your own environmental health officers have stated that it is not a statutory nuisance. I've cautioned members to including odour as part of your reason for refusal, unless you have evidence to substantiate that reason for refusal. And as such, I'm seeking clarification from yourself, Councillor Frost, as to whether or not you wish to continue to include that element as part of your proposal to refuse the application, or whether you wish to remove it.
Yes, I think it's a bit of guidance here, because I can't prove that the strength of this odour, and I can't, whilst I have visited a nearby residence on a couple of occasions, I've been to the van, I couldn't stand up and sign a testimony that I smelled sort of pungent fumes, because I haven't. All I said earlier is that I can believe how that in certain hot, windy days that odour would be offensive. If it's the view that our legal representative that that's not a submissible thing, then I have to take legal advice. But
I'm sure that will be the view.
That is my view. There is no denying that there is an odour. That odour does not mean the statutory damages for nuisance. And reasons to refuse on that basis are weak.
Then I'd have to take advice and withdraw it.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Well, I was just reading through the EPA Act again. It's got guidance here. Assessing smells can be difficult because people respond differently to them. So we can agree with that. Councils usually use at least 2 human sniffers to work out a number of things. Those being the strength of the smell, how often it's detectable, and for how long. When is it recognisable? Its offensiveness, its character, using descriptors like fruity, fishy, and the emission rate. So there's a whole number of things in the EPA that assist officers, and I suppose, well, I don't know where to go with this, but I'm still of the same opinion. But there's very clear guidelines here. And did officers manage to look into this kitchen odour assessment question?
Well, the officer did say that they've got some sniffers.
Yeah.
No, I was talking about with planning applications up until 2017. It was detailed within legislation that I've seen, which is now no longer valid, I will add, that with an application for example, a fish and chip shop or something such as that, or an evening takeaway or whatever, a food establishment, that a kitchen odour assessment would be looked for. And as I say, this is now out of date, but as I reference again, there's research showing that 97% of councils still use that document as a best practice for guidance. And I just wondered what DDC's uses for its guidance.
Through you, Chairman, I'm very involved. I've been very involved with this case because it has been subject to the full extent of the council's complaint procedure.
I've never heard of that kitchen assessment that you mentioned, so it certainly isn't on the record.
You've got
And I
Google
have
it.
seen all the evidence. There have been numerous visits by several trained officers, and all are satisfied that there is no evidence of prejudice on this.
Right. Well, I think everybody's had their say. We have a proposal
Chair, can I
here.
make just one quick comment? I may be naive here, but I'm confused as to how is this cited and who owns the land that it's cited on, and to what extent is there a connection to the social club and a responsibility for maintenance of the environment and facilities?
The social club own the land, as far as I'm aware. Well, they own the car park. What was your next question?
So the point is, to what extent, therefore, if it's owned by the social club, do the social club have responsibility for also working with the provider of the service? Because I, with Councillor Ritchie, have a similar view. Clearly there is demand, but clearly it has some issues in terms of definitely looking at it, it's not attractive. But where does the social club fit in terms of their responsibility to actually insist that it's not the standard that it should be?
It's the view of myself and the officer next door that the social club are the owners. They should have the responsibility. And that responsibility should pass from the owner to what is the person that is renting the space, I would have thought.
Can we just clarify before this goes, because I think you're going to vote next, that Councillor Frost, you amended your reason for refusal. Has that supported by
I've
the...
amended one of the, I quoted 5 policies and I've withdrawn one.
So, but to summarise, mainly it was around the impact on amenity. I think that's what we're left with.
Okay, that's a good show.
Yeah. And then...
To enhance its surroundings.
Yeah.
relation to visual amenity.
Visual amenity doesn't enhance surroundings. And as the seconder, I think before you go to vote, to check that the seconder is happy with the amendment.
I do, yeah. Is the seconder happy with the amendment? Right, now, before I go there, I've got one more speaker, and that's it, Councillor Mann.
Kind of just touched on, this one is so difficult, I'm so 50-50. On the one hand, we've got gentlemen here representing 15 people are against this, as opposed to one person who wants to run a business from this location. I don't like the look of it, it's horrible. I guess the smells are a problem, but I understand from a legal point of view, we can't take that into consideration. It is just so 50-50, so I would like guidance from officers, please. Councillor Frost has listed 3 other factors that would mean that we can vote against this application. Do officers consider that to be acceptable reasons for voting against this, please?
I think Councillor Frost, when you refer to all the policies, was really referring to the visual impact of the structure itself on the public rights of way and the ability of those using the public rights of way to enjoy the use of it. So that's what I think
What I was trying to do is express the view that the application in its current form is not compatible with the policies that I quoted. That was my motivation. Yeah. I was putting it to the fellow members that there was a disconnect between what we see before us and what we're supposed to do and take into account when making decisions. That's what I was trying to do.
Yeah, I think if that was your concern, then I feel that that's something officers could possibly uphold should the application be appealed.
Thank you. Okay, we have a proposal the application be refused for the given reasons. That's been seconded. All those in favour, please show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Those against?
1, 2, 3, 4.
The application is refused. Right. And it's 0572, and it's in the bill. And the only reason this is on is because it's one of our properties. No other reason.
Thank you, Chair. Just before I launch into the application, just to get it to go back more than 2 hours now.
Yeah.
Right at the beginning, the Chairman said the application could have been withdrawn. It hasn't been withdrawn. It's been deferred for us to take.
Deferred.
Yeah. It's been deferred for us to take legal advice on. So it hasn't gone away. It's a live application. We will be coming back to the future committee. So just to put that on straight. Yeah, as the Chairman said, this application was really just come before committee, not that there's any real issues with it, but because it's a Daventry District Council owned property, so under the Constitution it has to come before the planning committee. Proposal is to have a gym on the industrial estate around the corner. It's basically expanding an existing enterprise. It's already actually happened in any event during the life of the application, so it's kind of become retrospective by the time it's got to committee. The main concern was parking. Highways asked for some details to be sent in on parking, and when they got the details, they said, yeah, okay, they're happy with that. So on that basis, I recommend approval, Chairman.
Okay, the local member is Councillor Natton. Anything to say, Councillor?
I would recommend that we go with officer's advice and propose that we approve it.
Thank you. I gather you're putting your hand up to second it,
Second, exactly.
Yeah, I thought so. Anybody wish to speak? Okay. We have a proposal that it be approved, which has been seconded. All in favour, please show.
11.
Unanimous. Thank you.
Oh.
The application is approved. The stickers come off now. Next application is in Gilsborough, and it's 0690.
Yeah, Gilsborough School. Just refer members to the line reps as well, because you'll see we're suggesting an extra condition there. Proposal is to build a new sixth form block on what is an existing car park, and to alter the car park, which results in a net kind of one space. There was some concern about whether that was going to be sufficient to cater for the demand. But again, highways have expressed concern. I think it's fair to say we don't actually agree with ourselves. We've been out there, now the schools are back, the car park is half empty anyway. And as I say, with that in mind, and we suggested extra condition that they tell us about how they're going to make provision for parking during the construction period, we're happy. But the only other alternative is they can encroach, if they need more parking space in the future, they can encroach onto playing field land. But as you know, that's always a bit controversial, taking away playing field land. Although to be fair, how much of it is exactly playing field and how much of it is grass verge on the edge of the playing field might make a difference. But I think what we're saying is really we remain to be convinced there will be a parking problem, and on that basis we're recommending approval subject to that extra condition 6 in the right rep.
Thank you, Keith. Local member is myself. I fully support it. Excellent school. If it wasn't an academy, the county would give themselves permission for it. It only comes to us because it's an academy. So I will willingly, from the chair, propose approval. Are you seconding again?
I'm second again.
Thank you.
Because
Anybody
we
wish
need-
to
We
speak?
need a new sixth form.
Councillor Dabbs.
Yeah, I think these questions, or this sort of question I'm going to ask, is going to come up time and time again in planning in the near future. What about the carbon neutral elements of this? Is it a carbon neutral build? Will it have carbon neutral use? Where the photovoltaic cells on it? Where's the wind turbine? Where's the heat pump? What is the outside of the normal? Put a shed up and heat it from the inside with your normal gas heating, and with no regard to global warming whatsoever.
Probably nothing. Councillor, officers?
I haven't any information on that, to be fair.
Oh, I
Chair.
don't know.
I mean, it's the county council doing that building there to that construction.
We'll have to meet building regulations.
Well, I was going to say, building regulations will have to look at it, but exactly what else they're doing about it, I don't honestly know.
Can I just add a further point? As I say, that these questions will come up because I will continue to ask them. It sounds like that there are no regulations for this. We have our climate emergency committee, the several gentlemen here are on that, and this is one obvious case where we're just going along in the same way as we've done in the past, and that's got to stop if we're going to address climate change. So what can we do as a planning committee or the officers to address it?
You've got a point, and I'm sure all the members would agree. We ought to have perhaps a comment. Somebody ought to be making a comment about exactly that sort of thing on every planning application from now on. You're probably dead right. I don't know how we
Through
do
you,
it.
Chairman, planning policy. If there was a planning policy that required that, we could
We ought to make
negotiate that. But if without a planning policy, it's just remains for case officers to negotiate what they can with applicants.
So a suggestion from this committee. If you were to make a suggestion and it went through the system, it would probably get to strategy group, wouldn't it? And end up at council. And there would be a policy that every planning application comes forward, we would look at the carbon footprint part of the planning application.
Part of the task force
That is
as
part
well.
of the scope. Yeah, that is part of the scope.
I wonder if the officers could look into, what we can do under existing policy and prepare a briefing for us. There are other councils that actually do make it a requirement. Now, I don't know if they make it a requirement because they have actually passed local policy. But what is being proposed here is not environmentally sustainable. It is going to cause flooding. There are townships that may be washed out in Bangladesh because the ice caps are going to melt because we keep on putting up buildings like this. I mean, that's all over the news tonight from the most recent report. The National Policy Planning Framework insists that that buildings should be, that development should be sustainable. So clearly, any development that does not at least address these questions ought to be challenged. Are we not already in the position of being able to challenge? It seems highly unsatisfactory if it can only be a matter of negotiation or making suggestions to a developer when there is no power of compulsion at the moment. I just wonder if there's not, if there are not mechanisms for which we do have a power of compulsion. And I would, I'm not suggesting that we're told this here and now. This school probably needs this building, and
well, before I go to the officer, councillor, it's not a new building. Well, it is a new building, but it's to replace an old building.
Yeah, okay.
So an old building is being knocked down, and this is being put. It's not any bigger. It's still single story.
I accept that, but I mean, whether it's a replacement or a modification or new, the issue is still the same. If something is going to happen, I would be interested to have a more general statement of what we are entitled not to suggest, but to require.
John or Keith?
Yeah, well, we used to have a policy document, I can't remember what it's called now, but it had pictures of world on the front. And it was prepared by our planning policy section, and we used to use that. And then they told us it had to be withdrawn because it was being dealt with under the building regulations. That's what they told us then, but I don't know what the current up-to-date position is. But I think it's one we need to refer to our policy colleagues, to be honest, if that's what members want. We should be referred to our planning policy colleagues to say, well, can you look at this again? If you're not already looking at this, can you look at this again? And
there perhaps ought to be some input.
Yeah. Well, I say that, it might come to something,
Chair,
strategy group or whatever, at a future date. Sorry.
I understand I understand the concerns here, but the fact remains this council doesn't have a policy on this, and it's up to us as councillors to actually put forward policy to the council to actually decide upon policy to make it happen. That it's as simple as that. That's what we are as councillors. It's up to councillors to put it to council to implement a policy to do it. It is that simple as far as I'm concerned.
Well, if I may, Chair, I mean, I accept what Councillor Wesley says, that we as councillors have our responsibility for thinking about local policies. My question is there within the existing policy, within the existing national policy?
No, there isn't, as far as we're aware. Now, normally councillors would make the policy and officers would carry the policy out. But I think we need some help from the policy section to help us make a policy that is workable in planning, don't we?
Yeah, and through you, Chairman, there's a programme of work that's happening across West Northamptonshire as well, because of course we're under a West Northamptonshire joint core strategy. So it would be a case, I mean, to have any policy has got to have a substantial evidence base behind it. So it's possible that it's possible that the previous policy was removed because, of the need to have an evidence base to justify it. So for example, in Northampton, if we've got air quality management issues, they have a whole load of additional requirements for new housing that we don't have in Daventry district because we don't have air quality management areas. So you do have to have a supportive evidence base, and these are not the quick fixes.
I think that document with the world on it is actually a joint document with South Northampton, isn't it? It was a joint council thing with South Northampton, but then that was withdrawn by both authorities. And I'm sure at the time we were told it's because it's been superseded by the building regulations.
Councillor Parker.
Possibly, partly because I think what happened is the developers got onto the government of the day and said, we're not very happy about this, but maybe things have moved on since then.
Councillor Parker.
Yeah, I just want to bring to the notice the West Northamptonshire Strategic Plan issue consultation, where it talks about climate change resilience. The planning system has a key role to play in supporting the transition. I would hope that everybody would reply to this consultation and say exactly what's been said here and make sure they do reply, because that's what it's there for and that's what we need to do. And then it will go forward to them, and then it'll come back again, and then we can do something about it. But,
yes, but will that be in time for the next application?
It starts the ball rolling rather than just talking about something. I'd be really grateful if people replied to this.
Okay, well, do you just want to reply to that, or do you want to you can send a message?
I'll be sending a message.
No, this committee can send a message
Yes.
to the council that we would like some input on this, on planning applications.
Agreed.
Okay.
So that's a proposition to be captured for the minutes then.
Yeah. So that'll go in the minutes. Right. You've got a proposition that the application be approved, which has been seconded. All those in favour, please show. 12. Because I proposed it. Yeah. You can't. Right, that concludes the applications. There is one enforcement on. So, Keith, you're doing that, aren't you? Or you're doing it, right?
No, I'm doing it. Right.
Oh, he likes the fence, doesn't he? Yeah.
Well, it's definitely on the fence, that's the whole point, really.
I was being sarcastic.
Are you allowed to say that?
Yeah, considering we've already reduced management for it, and then inspectors also agreed with us and said it's a pretty ugly fence and I don't like it, I think we're not arguing to nothing really.
Yeah.
Having said all that, really it's probably been brought to committee to force an issue. We've been trying to negotiate with the applicants for the owner of the house since like July, I think, when the appeal was dismissed. And she's been prevaricating, I think it's fair to say. So I just thought, well, we have to force the issue. So So let's do an enforcement report and serve the pre-enforcement notice on that. Basically, that's what it used to look like. If we see what the fence did look like then at the start, because we can show you what the fence looked like at the start, because it's actually changed in the last week. But you can see that's how it was before, all open plan, no walls. The whole development site, there's two, for those who don't know Brooksworth, there are two cul-de-sacs here going out onto the Spratton Road. They're virtually the same. They're obviously former local authority houses, but they have a uniformity, including open plan and those low walls. And she erected this, that's it, that's what it used to look like. Erected this, it was even higher than this at one point, fence behind the wall, which obviously we've got a retrospective application for, which we refused. You'll see there's objections from parish council and the neighbour just living there. The neighbour whose car you see there is partially hidden, trying to get out of his drive. His visibility is blocked by the presence of the fence. So we refused that. The lady then appealed. She lost her appeal. The inspector agreed with us and said, don't really like that very much. Turned out the character of the area, harmful to the amenity, street scene, etc. So that was the original plan, was to get the whole thing cut down. Now, what's happened in the last couple of days is she has actually taken down part of it, but she's asking you, you'll see in the live reps, is it all right if I keep some of it? And I think the answer is no, because one part she wants to keep is the gate there, which just stands alone now, higher than the gate posts, the brick gate piers, and the rest of the fence either side of the gate. But also, you'll see towards the rear of the site, the problem hasn't been resolved, because we've still got this area that's blocking the guy's view in the car, which you can see there. And she's asking if she's we're allowed to keep that, and my recommendation will be no, you can't. You can cut that down as well. Now, normally for something to be permitted development, it's a metre high, and the metre is measured from the highest part of the land. Now, what you can see on the original Google Earth pictures is that behind that high fence, the level of the land is higher. So if you go back to the Google Earth image, you'll see there's a raised garden behind there. Here you go, look. If you just go down slightly and zoom on it a bit more, you can get it from the side angle a bit better. You can see there's a step up there. If you just go down the road a little bit, you have to be good at working on this, that's it.
This garden.
Yeah, you can see it. You can see it normally, but it steps up, that side garden steps up, so all I'm saying is being meted from the grass behind the wall. Now, if that turns out that still blocks the guy's visibility, which might well be the case, then that wouldn't actually be permitted development because it would be causing an obstruction to highway visibility. And I've thought about this since I've looked at these photos, and I thought we perhaps ought to just modify the recommendation to say that it's 1 metre high, or that part is cut back in the corner, like she said she was actually going to do but never did, just to ensure that it doesn't obstruct visibility of that person coming off their drive.
Yeah.
So that bit might have to be actually lower. Now the other part she's questioned is between the, go back to the other photo now, what's still there? You can just zoom down the other end of it. Yeah, she's got this side wall here that goes across. Now what the permitted development legislation says is adjacent, it can be 1 metre high adjacent to the highway, and there's no definition of what adjacent to the highway means. So she's been hanging with us again about how far back do I have to cut that back? Is it 1 metre, 2 metres, what is it? So we've said 2 metres because basically that's normally the width of the fence panel, where we've taken previous enforcement action in Brooksworth against the fence earlier this year, used to get that first panel taken back. Plus also, when they talk about allowances for porches and distance from the highway, they also use the 2 metre figure. So that's where I'm getting that from, just as a... But I mean, again, that could be challenged, and she could argue if she feel that, no, I can put it back on metre and it's not adjacent to the highway. But we're certainly covered on the angle of the corner there by the highway visibility rule, which says it can't be that it's a metre, it can't be that it still blocks highway visibility. So with all that in mind, what I'm saying is we cut the rest of it down to a metre and whatever's necessary on that corner to restore highway visibility and the gate as well, just for the avoidance of doubt. The silly sort of sticking a gate now, which looks silly anyway in my view, inside the brick piers.
So this will be the round.
Yeah.
It's a bit further.
Oh no, that's
further.
the internal.
Sorry, that's the internal guide. She can have that. I'm not worried about that.
It's further down.
Yeah.
It's down the road.
There it
Yes,
is.
yes.
There it is. I mean, it's not.
That looks silly,
It's just not necessary to have a gate that high. You know, fences is the same height as the
It
brick.
stops giraffes eating their hedge.
Yeah. So that's what I'm proposing anyway as a solution. But obviously she has started work now, which is what I said might happen. She has told us in the late reps it will be completed on the 1st of November. If we serve the enforcement notice, that would be within the time scale we were envisaging, because as I've probably told you recently, in planning training, I've probably put in here, it takes 28 days to have effect, so she gets 28 days to decide if she wants to appeal. So that would be kind of towards the end of October. We served it straight away, and then obviously she gets 28 days to actually do the work within that time, which would take her through to November, so some of it's done by then. But yeah, I'm quite pleased, to be fair, that at least she's finding a attempt now to do something, but she still obviously wants to try and get it with him. I don't think she should. Anyway, that's the advice.
Thank you. Local members, do you wish to say anything?
I'm only, as I said earlier on, I'm aware of the complaint and the issues by the neighbour from the election campaign recently. So I suspect that there's probably a dispute between the two. That's not helping the situation, but I agree. I think I would agree with the recommendation of the officer as a solution to this.
The other member?
Yeah, I agree with the recommendation and the alteration that Mr Thursfield's done.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councillor.
I wonder if you could switch to the photograph of the high front gate. The one that gave that I mean that one there. Is there not a danger that somebody is going to say, cutting that back to make it lower, is that not absolutely ridiculous? When even as it stands, it's not nearly as high as the hedge that goes round the next house.
So why don't
and until we have some regulation on the size of hedges,
We do.
for us to be worrying about the design of the gate. To me, in the context, that gate looks fine to me. I wouldn't have any problem with that. And particularly when you see that gate, and when it looks about only, it's the hedge at the back is almost twice as high.
Through you, Chairman, there is high hedges legislation, but that's nowhere near it.
Have you still got the Google Earth app?
Yeah.
If you just flick across to the side of the road, the solution is do that. Which is exactly what the neighbour's done. Just put a hedge in. You don't need planting for a hedge.
Can I ask a quick question?
You told her that? Yeah.
Yes, she knows that.
Chairman, just a very quick question. Is that actually offending anyone? I'm not particularly sure either way, but are you getting calls from people who are distressed about the
gate?
Yeah.
Well, basically, as I say, things have changed this week in that she's cut down part of the fence that leads up to the gate. She wants to keep the gate. I just think it looks ridiculous having a gate like that, where you cut down the rest of the fence. Now, there's a photo she's provided from the inside of the gate, which shows you how it's constructed. You can see there it's 2x things. What she's got to do is chop the top out.
It does.
Chop the top X off.
So this is the owner's photo.
This is the owner's photo.
Fence has been the main issue.
Yeah, that's it. So all she's got to do is just take off the top of those posts and take off the top X and just line it through the rest of the fence there. And that would, in my view, that would look a lot better.
It does. Yes. It does, and that is common sense. But I suppose she would say, if it's not offending anyone on the basis that we're sort of paid to serve the people, if you like, if that's going to cost a lady that maybe doesn't have much money, if it's going to cost her 200-300 quid to do that, who she's going to be 300 quid poorer. Is anybody's life going to be improved?
I'll do it for 20 quid.
Well,
yes, me too.
As I say, if you look at the, you can take a view on it, but obviously if you look at the history of it, both the parish council and the neighbour objective, we refused it under delegated powers. The planning inspector said, I think it hardly met in the locality and refused it. And until such recent days, that was part of a continuous 2 metre fence going the whole length, as you saw in the earlier photos. Now the legislation says the gate is part of the fence. So
She's in contempt of the
basically,
rules. She's gone through the system and lost.
Okay.
Right. I need a proposal that you accept the resolution.
yeah, I think
With a
I think we
modification.
had-
I thought the two local councils
Yeah.
had
I
proposed.
thought-
I beg your pardon. In that case, if you have proposed and
It
seconded,
sounded like.
do you all agree? Please show. That's got to be unanimous. No, not quite. Thank you very much.
Well, what we'll try and do anyway is we'll maybe in the next day or two try and negotiate just doing it. So that's what the planning committee wanted and not serving notice, but we might have to serve the notice.
That concludes